Well, happy Wednesday adventure. This is Daniel Daigneault. We're continuing to walk through the Monday, Wednesday, Friday Devos on certain Psalms. Today we're going to be in Psalm 55. So if you've not read Psalm 55, push the pause button on the video. Take about 5-10 minutes to read this. Think about what stands out to you and come back here, pushing the unpause button, and you're going to get a few minutes of reflection on what we see here. So, okay, for those of you who have read this psalm, I really like this psalm. It's got one of my life verses in it. One of the things, I don't consider myself an anxious person, but I certainly have fears and anxieties. And this psalm is written by David, and it's the backdrop is that he's got a friend. And we learn this in the psalm. He's got a friend, a close friend, a friend that, as a matter of fact, in verses 13, it says, it's not, in 12, it says, if it was an enemy insulting me, I could endure it, but he's been wronged. And he's been wronged by who? It says, it is by you, a man like myself, a companion. It says, we once enjoyed sweet fellowship. We walked with the throng at the house of David. This is a man who David would consider a friend, and now has wronged him in a pretty grievous way. And so the beginning of this psalm is really gripping. You hear this word thoughts. He says, he's pleading to the Lord. He says, my thoughts trouble me. And I think, boy, isn't that where anxiety starts? It starts with our thoughts. Fears start with our thoughts. And then he said, oh, but if I had the wings of a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. Hurry to this place of shelter, far away from the storm. And kind of this fight or flight thing, he just wants to flee from it. I mean, can't we relate, right? Just run from your troubles far away. And the problem is, right, with that, no matter where we go, there we are. So David recognizes his anguish, and he knows where it's stemming from. And then the key to this psalm that I think we can really unpack for a few minutes here and think through is 16 through 23. And it starts with that word but. So a lot of this has been, I'll use the term pity party, a lot of this has been about David in his thoughts, fearful and hurt by a friend. But then he recalibrates and he says, but I call to God. So there's three words we'll focus on. That first one in verse 16 is call. But he calls to God, and look what happens. These are promises we can take. But I call to God, and the Lord saves me. Now, when does he call to God? Evening, morning, and noon. I cry in distress. And what happens? And he, the Lord, he hears my voice. Now we go from a lot of I sentences. I could endure this. I would flee. And now he says, I'm going to call. But suddenly it flips to what God does. The Lord saves. He hears my voice. He ransoms me. God, who is enthroned forever, will hear them and afflict them. It really turns to the one who can solve his problems and who is in control. And so he calls. Then we get to the key verse for me, and that's one of my life verses, verse 22. It says, cast your cares on the Lord. He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous fall. Why I like that, or why it's so powerful, is that word cast is, this isn't just like placing something. This is hurling. The verb here is to hurl. It's like, before the garbage guys used to pick up my cans, they used to have guys who rode on the back, and they would come and they would pick up the bags, and they would just hurl those bags of trash into the trash, into the truck. That's what this is. And imagine he is saying, take your cares, God, I take my cares, and cast them, hurl them on you. And why does he do that? Because he says, and he, God, will sustain you. And then there's the promise. And remember, whenever you are in times of fear or anxiety or distress or depression, claim the promises of God. And that's the promise here. He will never let the righteous fall. And then the last one, in the very last sentence, of verse 23 is, but as for me, I will trust in the Lord. So he has fears, anxieties. And anxieties are really They are distractions. That word means to distract, and the root of it is that anxieties and fears distract us. They generally turn us from looking to God to looking to ourselves. And boy, don't we want to control when we want to control anyway, but especially when we're fearful or in a situation where we've got a lot of anxiety. We want to control and not cast, right? But why should we do this? Why should we cast our cares on the Lord? Well, in a follow-up verse of this is in 1 Peter, and 1 Peter 6 and 7, mainly in 7, but in 6 it says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you." He cares for you. Why should we take our troubles and cast them on the Lord? Because he cares. Now, I don't know about you, but I can throw. Okay, I could cast these troubles. Probably a better way of looking at it is thinking of the cross and going to the foot of the cross and taking my troubles. My issues at work, issues in our society. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's your children. Maybe it's in your family. Maybe it's just some internal anxiety and depression. And I can set that. And I can set that at the foot of the cross. And I can pray about it. But generally, what happens is when I get up from the cross, I pick it back up. So I can cast it. My problem isn't putting it on the Lord. My problem is taking it back from him. And so when I'm tempted to do that, and when you're tempted to do that, be reminded that God cares for you. I mean, he cares for you. Not that he can sympathize or empathize or say, what, I really feel bad for you. He cares for you. And unlike anyone else in our lives, unlike anyone else on this planet, God doesn't simply care. He can do, or God is able to do more than all that we could ever ask or imagine. So cast your cares today on God. He sustains you and he cares. Lord, thank you for these words of encouragement today. Boy, it's timely because we have lots of cares individually and as a nation, as a society, as a culture. Cast those on you, Lord, knowing that you care. Come beside us, beside me in this day, and remind me that you will never let me fall. I claim that promise in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.